Hey folks, this is a review on completing the square. You had to complete the square in previous courses, but you've probably only done that with a single variable. This completing the square is going to be done with two variables. It's the exact same completing the square. It's just simply that you're working with two variables instead of one variable. So I'd like to just run through a quick review of that. So you notice that I have a standard equation here. It's pretty ugly. We don't really know what to do with it. We've got some x's, we have some y's. So the very first thing that you're going to do is you want to factor that a value out of the x terms. When I talk about the a value or the b value or the c value, you remember back from previous classes, you had an equation that said y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. So these are the a's, b's, and c's to which I'm referring. The difference is that now I do have multiple variables. So if you pull out the a just out of the x terms, that's going to be factoring out that 16 from the two x terms, and this is what you'll get. You'll also want to factor a out of the y terms. So in this case, that's a 25. So factor the 25 out, and you're left with that y squared minus 6y. So then the next thing you're going to want to do is take the constant to the other side. So you have this negative 159. You want to take that over to the other side, and you're essentially just going to ignore it for the time being. There's nothing that you're going to do with it. All right, next, this is a few steps here that you would have learned back in your previous math course. And the first thing that you're going to do is you want to take half of the b value. Take half of the b value. So once again, if I'm looking at just the x terms, the b value is going to be that 2 right there. So half of your x b value is going to be 1. Half of your y b value is going to be 3. Take that number and square it. So 1 squared is 1. 3 squared is 9. Take that number and add it to both sides. Now be careful when you add it to both sides. You want to make sure that you allow for the a value. So let me show you what I'm talking about. First of all, you're going to add that 1 that we got here to the left side. But notice that this 1 is technically not a 1 because it's being affected by the a value out front. It's technically a 16 times a 1. So when I add it over to the right-hand side, that's going to actually be a 16 times a 1. And for the record, the 159 was already there from our previous equation. Let's do the exact same thing then to the y's. So notice that we had here a 9 that we wanted to add to both sides. So I'm adding my 9, but technically it's not just a 9. It's a 9 that's being multiplied by the 25. So when I add it over to the right-hand side, I'm adding a 25 times a 9. So now let's factor the 3 terms that are on the inside. You guys know how to factor by now. And so when I factor that first trinomial, I get x plus 1 quantity squared. When I factor the second trinomial, I get y minus 3 quantity squared. And then all I did was simplify the numbers on the right-hand side to get my 400. One quick statement here as a reminder about factoring. The shortcut method to this is that, first of all, you always keep the variable that you had. And the second thing is that this number is always going to be the b value that you found a few moments ago. And so even over here, you keep your variable, which is y, and negative 3 was that b value that we found. I know that you don't see a negative 3 there, but if you go back up to what the b term was, we took half of negative 6. And so half of negative 6 is where I got that negative 3 from. Whatever the original b sign was is going to be the sign that you're going to use when you factor.